The Wars of the Roses, fought from 1455 to 1485, was a prolonged and tumultuous series of civil wars in England. These conflicts were driven by competing claims to the English throne by two rival factions of the royal House of Plantagenet, the House of Lancaster, symbolized by a red rose, and the House of York, symbolized by a white rose. The wars were not merely battles for power, they were struggles that deeply fragmented England's aristocracy, destabilized the monarchy, and paved the way for the rise of the Tudor dynasty, which would shape the country's history for centuries. Origins of the wars. The roots of the Wars of the Roses can be traced back to the complex and often contentious nature of medieval English monarchy and succession. The Plantagenet dynasty had ruled England since the reign of Henry II in the 12th century, but by the mid-15th century, it was riven by internal divisions. The seeds of discord were sown during the reign of King Edward III, 1327–1377, whose numerous children created multiple lines of succession. Edward's descendants included the Lancastrians and the Yorkists, and disputes over their claims to the throne would erupt into open conflict generations later. By the 15th century, England was weakened by the fallout from the 100 Years' War with France. 1337–1453. The loss of almost all English territories in France was a humiliating blow to the crown and drained the kingdom's resources. Meanwhile, internal governance was plagued by factionalism, corruption, and an increasingly dissatisfied nobility. At the center of this volatile situation was King Henry VI, a monarch ill-equipped to handle the demands of his position. Henry VI, from the House of Lancaster, inherited the throne as an infant in 1422. His reign was marked by instability, primarily due to his bouts of mental illness and weak leadership. His inability to effectively govern the realm or assert control over ambitious nobles created a power vacuum. Furthermore, his marriage to Margaret of Anjou, a strong-willed and politically astute queen, alienated many of his subjects, as her influence often clashed with that of other prominent figures in the court. Margaret became a key figure in the Lancastrian cause, but her polarizing nature deepened divisions within the kingdom. On the other side of the conflict was Richard, Duke of York, a powerful nobleman and descendant of Edward III through his mother, Anne Mortimer. Richard's claim to the throne was strong, and he garnered significant support among disaffected nobles who were frustrated with the incompetence of Henry VI's government. Richard initially sought to reform the government and gain recognition as the king's heir, but his ambitions soon evolved into a direct challenge for the crown. Outbreak of the wars. The first outbreak of violence came in 1455 with the First Battle of St Albans. This skirmish, fought in the streets of the Hertfordshire town, marked the beginning of open hostilities. Richard of York's forces defeated the Lancastrians, capturing King Henry VI and briefly gaining control of the government. However, this victory did not resolve the underlying tensions. Henry was restored to power, and the court remained divided between Yorkist and Lancastrian factions. The conflict resumed in the 1460s as both sides sought to consolidate their power. Richard of York's death at the Battle of Wakefield in 1460 was a significant blow to the Yorkist cause, but his son, Edward, took up the mantle. Edward proved to be a charismatic and capable leader, and in 1461, he dealt a decisive blow to the Lancastrians at the Battle of Towton. This battle, one of the largest and bloodiest of the wars, secured Edward's position as king. He was crowned Edward IV, and the Yorkists appeared to have triumphed. Edward IV's reign and continued conflict. Edward IV's reign was not without challenges. While he was an effective military leader, his decisions as king sometimes alienated key supporters. His secret marriage to Elizabeth Woodville, a commoner, caused outrage among the nobility, as it undermined political alliances that had been carefully cultivated through planned marriages. The Woodville family, elevated to prominence by this union, became a source of resentment among Edward's allies, including Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, known as the Kingmaker. Warwick, once a staunch Yorkist supporter, turned against Edward and allied himself with Margaret of Anjou in a remarkable reversal of loyalties. This alliance briefly restored Henry VII to the throne in 1470, but Edward IV quickly regrouped and defeated Warwick and the Lancastrians in 1471 at the battles of Barnet and Tewkesbury. These victories solidified Edward's reign and led to the capture and subsequent death of Henry VI in the Tower of London, effectively ending the Lancastrian line of leadership. Edward ruled in relative peace until his death in 1483, but his untimely demise set the stage for further conflict. Edward's young son, Edward V, was named his successor, but his uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, seized power. Richard declared the young king and his brother illegitimate and took the throne as Richard III. The mysterious disappearance of Edward V and his brother, often referred to as the Princes in the Tower, cast a dark shadow over Richard's reign and undermined his legitimacy. The rise of Henry Tudor Richard III's usurpation created an opening for a new challenger, Henry Tudor, a relatively obscure Lancastrian claimant. Henry's claim to the throne was tenuous, rooted in his descent from John of Gaunt, the Duke of Lancaster, through an illegitimate line later legitimized by Parliament. However, Henry's cause gained traction due to widespread dissatisfaction with Richard III's rule and his ability to rally support from both the Lancastrians and disaffected Yorkists. Henry spent much of his early life in exile in Brittany but returned to England in 1485 to press his claim. His forces met Richard III's army at the Battle of Bosworth Field on August 22, 1485. This battle proved decisive. Richard fought valiantly but was ultimately killed in combat, the last English king to die on the battlefield. Henry's victory ended the Plantagenet dynasty and marked the beginning of the Tudor era. The Tudor dynasty and the aftermath of the wars after his victory. Henry Tudor was crowned King Henry VII. To solidify his rule and unite the warring factions, Henry married Elizabeth of York, the daughter of Edward IV. This union symbolically ended the Wars of the Roses by merging the Red Rose of Lancaster with the White Rose of York, creating the Tudor Roses, a new emblem of peace and unity. Henry VII's reign marked a turning point in English history. He worked diligently to restore stability to a kingdom fractured by decades of civil war. Through strategic marriages, financial reforms, and careful consolidation of power, Henry laid the foundation for a strong and centralized monarchy. His efforts to curtail the influence of overmighty nobles and strengthen the crown set the stage for the Tudor dynasty's dominance, which would continue with his son, Henry VIII, and his granddaughter, Elizabeth I. The Wars of the Roses left a lasting legacy on England. The nobility was significantly weakened, as many prominent families were decimated by the conflicts. The rise of the Tudors ushered in a new era of governance, culture, and diplomacy. England's transition from medieval feudalism to early modern statehood can be traced back to the aftermath of these wars. In the end, the Wars of the Roses were more than a dynastic struggle. They were a transformative period in English history, one that reshaped the nation's political and social landscape and set the stage for the remarkable achievements of the Tudor age.